Welcome to Root Awakening Farm Tours Straight to the Source. Today we're at Pine Lane Acres at 343 Oliver's Road in Bobcaygeon. Let's go meet sheep farmers Zach, Corey, and Jesse. Good, how are you? Hi Corey, this is my husband Tom, I'm Connie.
Hi Tom.
Oh, this is Zach, Jesse. All right, we're in the sheep barn and we're here with Zach, who is a co-owner, and we're just going to go on a little tour. We've got some other owners over there who don't really want to be on the camera, but we're going to go learn a little bit more about, that could be edited out. We're going to go learn a little bit more about sheep. So, Zach.
Yes.
This is a multi-generational farm.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So it was originally my grandpa and grandma's. They bought it in the 1950s. It was originally a dairy farm. Oh. So they used to have a milk room and everything and all the piping through here. So my uncle said at one point he had about 100 head of cattle in here, which seems crazy to me. That's cows and calves, but it was pretty packed in here.
Pretty packed.
Yeah. So once they kind of slowed down, my dad and uncle ran it as a beef farm for quite a while. And after my dad slowed down, we decided we were going to get into sheep. With my sister, who was pregnant at the time, we thought beef cattle might be a bit big for her to handle if she was here by herself. And with my wife pretty new to farming, we thought sheep might be an easier introduction. But
it's a good plan.
We learned the hard way it's not. They're very labor intensive and a lot of work.
Okay, Zach's going to take us in and show us the different breeds and what all there is to know about sheep farming.
Yeah. So we've got them split up right now.
Whoa, they scattered.
Yeah, we got them split up into two breeding groups.
Okay.
This is because we're trying to grow our operation. So we're keeping a lot of the young ewes. So we obviously can't breed the sire, which is the male, to his daughters. So we're separating them out. So we have the ram over on the other side right now, breeding with that group.
Is that Bill?
That's Bill, yeah.
Bill gets around, I hear.
Yeah, he's our Canadian Arcot, Rito Arcot, and he is from Ottawa. We actually bought him and had him shipped out, him and his brother. So we got two.
Okay, so how many sheep do you have all in?
So the count varies because they're very hard to count, but we're up around 50 ewes now, and a few rams at the back who will be going for meat later on this year. And
how often do you breed? How often do you do that cycle?
Yeah, so we breed about once a year, and we breed later in the fall, and we lamb in the springtime when the pastures become green, and then we can get all the sheep out on the pasture.
Okay, so they seem a little skittish of us. Is that normal behavior? Like they're not aggressively coming at us?
No, definitely not. There's a saying that sheep are, they either think you're trying to kill them. They always think you're trying to kill them. And so they're always like that. They just, they're very skittish unless you have grain in your hand. Then they're your best friend.
So this one.
So we try to get all of our sheep without any horns. It just prevents injury. They can have some issues with horns if they overgrow. When we got her, there was about a 50% chance she would have horns. You can see her mother's over on the other side there, and she doesn't have horns. So it's Icelandic sheep are more prone to growing horns.
Icelandic sheep, is that a good meat?
So we bought these specifically for wool. We were just trying to do a bit of an experiment. They tend to be a slower growing sheep and a smaller sheep. Still good meat profile, but just slower growing. So obviously for the meat market, not as desirable.
And when do you shear them?
So we shear once a year in the spring. So they don't have any wool in the summer, so they can stay cool. And then later on, in the wintertime, they grow their wool to stay warm. Yeah.
And I noticed there's one over here who tends to look like she's isolated.
Yeah, so that's our other ram. So we had him in for breeding. He's having some digestive issues right now.
Okay.
So the vet believes some nerve damage in his his esophagus. So
he looks like he just wants to.
Yeah, so we're just trying to keep an eye on him and get them healthy.
So optimally, these will all go to the meat.
No, so these are all our breeding ewes.
Okay.
You'll see the ones on the far side will end up going for our meat.
Meat market, okay.
So right now we're keeping all the ewes to try to grow our herd and expand a lot more.
Sure, that makes
Yeah.
sense. So what could go wrong in a year?
So sheep are, again, this is our third year into sheep, so we're still learning a lot. But they're very prone to parasites, which are in the ground, and every animal gets them in their stomach. Cattle can handle it because they have a lot bigger stomach, whereas sheep can't. So if they get an overload of parasites, and they end up just getting sick and can't get the nutrition they need from their food.
And are you able to do all of that on your own, or do you need a vet that helps you with that?
Yeah, so we do have the vet guiding us along, but we try to do most of the work ourselves. With sheep, the goal is to keep costs really low. So we do a lot of the deworming and the vaccinations and try to do most of the care ourselves.
Okay, so you operate the farm, but you also work externally from the farm.
Yes, yeah. So like I said, this was a project we started a few years ago, and all four of us have full-time jobs. But we really enjoy doing this, and we like having animals around the farm. And eventually, I mean, in the ideal world, we'd be doing this full-time, but it's just not sustainable without some work off the farm.
That's understandable, but animals are full-time, so
Yes.
who feeds them when you're not here?
So with the four of us, we kind of they get fed in the morning and at night. So we split that task up. We all kind of take turns. When we get into lambing season and stuff, we're usually all around because they need to be checked almost 24/7. You don't want any frozen lambs or anything like that.
So what do you expect as a full cycle? What do you expect to have in new births?
So ideally, you'd like all of them to lamb, and you aim for a goal of 2 to 3 lambs per ewe. So if we have 50, you'd like to get 100 or 150 lambs, somewhere in between that.
So you typically would like each ewe to have 1 to 2 lambs, but how can you produce? Can you interact with that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things you can do, and you try to push the numbers up for profitability. So 2, 3, 4. 4 gets a bit tricky because it's a lot of lambs for one ewe. But basically, you do a practice called flushing. So 2 weeks before you put the ram in, you kind of overload them with feed, and it gets their bodies thinking that they're in really good condition, and they drop more eggs. And then you release the ram and you keep the feed levels high.
More eggs to fertilize.
Exactly, yeah. So
it's not a medication.
No. And there are hormones and stuff you can use. We don't on this farm. We try to do everything as natural and let the sheep do all the work themselves. That's kind of our goal. Keeps us more hands off.
All right, you said that they get fed twice a day, but what do they eat?
Yeah, so we mostly are a grass-fed operation.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so in the summer we try to pasture as long and as late as we can. Right now we're working on a lot of our fencing because that's the major drive to getting them on pasture. And we're also working on having some guardian dogs to protect them. So in the wintertime when there's no more pasture, we bale and cut all our own hay in the summertime. And we have enough to get us through the winter. A lot of times sheep farms use grain and things like that to supplement, but we're lucky here we have some pretty high protein content hay, so they're able to keep the weight on and put on weight with our hay.
So they pasture feed and then you move them on with fencing?
Yeah, exactly. So we try to rotate as much as we can, but right now we're actually working on building our perimeter fence back up so that we can have that rotational grazing in our practices. One, it helps with parasite management. It also helps, obviously, with nutrition and soil health.
I saw one that has an X on her back, number 28. What's going on there?
So, as you can see, the sheep run around a lot.
They do.
So when we're doing any type of management, say vaccinations or any type of deworming, we like to mark them so that we know we already.
You can't tell them from each other?
Well, when they're running around like you see, it can get tough sometimes. So
they all look like.
my wife's a lot better at telling the difference between the sheep, but for us it's tough.
You can tell the difference?
Yeah.
Do they have names?
Yes, they do. We spend a lot of time down here, so it's tough not to name them, and some of them have cool markings or things like that, so they end up with a name based on that.
But the ones that go for meat, do they have names?
Some of them do, yes.
I probably didn't want to know that.
No, yeah, and it's never easy getting rid of them, or because you spend so much time, looking after them and making sure they're healthy.
So we understand that Zach's wife, Jessie, really does know their names. And this is June. June looks like she is a friend. She?
Yep.
I'm getting to know that. The meat that's on your farm,
yes,
it can be purchased here at the farm store. Do you have a farm store? Or
yes, we mostly sell through Instagram right now, so you can message us and we can let you know what we have available. We typically sell just cut and packaged lambs, so ground, chops, stew meat, shanks, things like that.
Okay, so they would go on Pine Lane Acres Instagram,
yes,
contact you on the message with maybe Jessie or you,
yeah,
and then
and we can let them know what we have and
it's
how
a pickup
we yes
type of thing.
Yeah, we also do a little bit of deliveries if it's local. We have about 3 rams,
and they do all of that breeding.
They do, yeah. They're a bit older. Typically, if you have younger rams, you'll need more of them to cover a flock, but the older they get, the more they can breed.
But like you were saying, you have to keep generations apart.
Yeah, so we'll be breeding them this year, and we'll probably look at purchasing some new lambs either next year or the following year.
I see.
Yeah.
And do your rams ever go off? Bill was
yes.
visiting, right?
Yes, so we have a neighboring farm where we lend out our rams, and they've done the same for us. It helps us keep our genetics mixed up
that makes sense.
and not interbreeding, so.
Well, I've just learned a lot about sheep on this farm. We really want to thank you, Zach, for having us on this farm, because we know that farmers are busy people.
Yeah, we appreciate you having us.